Hello everyone, today is Monday, November 9th. As always, I'm your host for Collectibles and Coffee, Edward Nguyen. I actually don't even have a beverage with me today. It's been a pretty busy morning for me. So today, Menagerie Monday, like always, be kind of talking about some things. I think the most relevant things that are upcoming that's worth talking about. Vivid Voltage, new Pokemon set, it's coming out. We'll kind of do a quick review on that. We'll look at some of the things I got in mail today. Monday, usually a bunch of orders come in. The people at the post office hate me because my mailbox is usually just completely stuffed on Monday with all the packages that come. Had some results over the weekend regarding the election. The market did surge. We'll kind of take a look at that, see how that impacts the real world, see potentially what could come up in the upcoming quarter and next few months. So that's relevant. And then we'll kind of talk about Commander Legends. Talk about Commander Legends, see what is coming up. We have the full spoiler, and we'll kind of look at possible supply allocation issues and how that could affect box prices, single prices, etc. So we'll hop right in. So this coming Friday is the release for Vivid Voltage. That is the kind of fall set, as it were, for Pokemon. It is going to be a pretty big set. It is a standard set, so there will be your full range of product from booster boxes, booster packs, theme decks, starter decks. There's battle packs, there's pre-releases, etc. Some people have already started selling the pre-release cards that they got. Same kind of game plan as before. Stores can't really have events, so people are able to just go in, get a pre-release pack, buy the pre-release pack, and sell them. The pre-release promos have been doing particularly well on some of them, so those are worth looking into. Supply is probably the highest right now. Generally, in the past, pre-release promos have been kind of a mixed bag. There's usually a lot of misses, but the ones that hit are quite valuable, so they're worth looking into. I'm not super familiar with the markets on all of them, but because they are kind of limited, they are a little bit cooler than simply what Magic does. I think the pre-release for Magic, in my mind, is a little bit underwhelming in the sense that it doesn't really feel like a pre-release promo is particularly any bit cooler compared to a normal foil rare. Really, the only difference is there's a date stamped. And since they've done away with exclusive pre-release promos in the past, the way pre-release promos nowadays work for Magic is that any rare in the set can be a pre-release promo. Again, the only difference is there's a stamp with a date on it of the pre-release. Not really that exciting. The pre-release promos for Pokemon, a little bit more unique. They stand out a little bit more. I think they have a little more pop to them because they have a stamp on them that has the name of the set. It's colored. It definitely stands out. Usually most stamped product for Pokemon are a little bit more visible. It's much easier to tell that they are a pre-release promo as opposed to just being your out-of-the-mill rare with a stamp on it. So that's something that's worth investigating. I believe the biggest one, I'm going to pull it up here just to make sure it is the Lugia promo, the staff versions. So in addition to regular pre-release promos, there is an additional pre-release promo variant for staff. It actually is stamped and it actually says staff on it. Those ones are very, very rare. They're very sought after. The Charizard one from Evolutions, the pre-release promo with the staff stamp, very, very valuable, very hard to come by, mainly because there's several variations of what you can get. So getting the chase one, the premium one, fairly difficult. You're not likely to get it most of the time. Same idea. A fair amount of the promos do end up being busts. It is possible that you get the chase one, and usually those are big wins if you can find them. I just pulled it up on TCG Player right now. The pre-release promos, the best one, Lugia. Cheapest copies I can find are $20. Someone has 4 of them for $20. Then it's $35. That's $49, and then it's $89. So there are pretty big price jumps The market not quite established yet. It may be worth waiting a little bit for a kickback, but these are fairly limited and they do rise pretty well over time. So I think these are worth holding on to. That being said, if we look at the pre-release promo, the staff variant of the Lugia promo, we are looking at, TCG doesn't have this in stock even actually. So not a really good gauge. I'm going to try and pull up eBay just to get one quick point here. Pre-release staff. Pretty big price differences. The cheapest one I see one that's being listed for $422.75. Otherwise, we have some pretty out there numbers. 3 listings at $1,500 for these promos. There's some bids that do suggest these are a little bit cheaper than that, but the vast majority of them I see are being listed for $1,500. If we try and toggle this over to sold listings to see what they have been selling for, there was a $2,000. They took a best offer on that. There was a $1,500. A best offers took on that. There was an auction that closed at $1,300. There's another one from the UK that closed at $1,445. So these are pretty valuable. There is a lot of value to them. People do like them. They are fairly hard to get onto, but they hold their value extremely well simply based on how scarce they are. It is worth following up on. Vivid Voltage itself, looking at the actual product, it is a very, very high EV set. I believe there are some supply issues with the set. I think that demand far, far, far exceeded the initial supply. So at the time of this writing, if you actually go on TCG Player and you are looking to buy a box, you are actually paying very, very close to MSRP for a booster box, which is something that is not super common. That's not something people actually are very aware of. If you go to the official Pokemon website and you try to buy online, the price on a booster box, the retail price, is $143.60 some odd cents. It basically comes out to $3.99 a pack, and $3.99 a pack times 36 packs will yield you roughly that $144. What we usually see is people have slowly started to develop this trend over time where boxes are slowly getting undercut by different stores. People are trying to sell them as quickly as possible. So boxes have generally become much cheaper, and people have started to think that boxes should be in the $95 to $100 range, depending on where you are. For the first time, Vivid Voltage, I shouldn't say for the first time, but in quite some time, Vivid Voltage will actually be the first product that is actually going to be roughly at MSRP prices. I think a big part of that is, again, the set is very, very good EV. A lot of singles have a lot of demand for them. We'll kind of touch on the singles in a moment. But the set itself is particularly valuable. There's quite a few good singles. And when you compound that with scarcity, with how short printed the set is likely going to be at this time, until more reprints hit the market, until there's another wave of product come in, Vivid Voltage is likely going to stay at this price for quite some time. Personally, for game stores, I think anyone who went in and ordered a large amount would have done very, very well on this. There are some factors that are, I think, pretty key to Vivid Voltage. I think Vivid Voltage is certainly going to be an above average set in terms of Pokemon for standard, in terms of standard sets. Playability wise, we have to remember, is not everything. That is usually one of the bigger selling points of a new standard set for Pokemon when they come out, but we have to remember how big the collectability angle is. If you look at Vivid Voltage boxes, you'll see that front and centerpiece of the box, centerpiece of the art is a giant Pikachu. We all know Pikachu is very iconic. It's really become synonymous with what Pokemon is. There's some very, very cool art in the set. These are all points that I believe Pokemon has started to take more and more into account as of late. They know that the collector market is really there. People don't care only about the playability. Being able to sell the set itself to collectors by having these multiple rarity products, by having these rarities come in inside the set that have that appeal to both the player who simply want the card for accessibility as cheap as possible, and the collectors who want the premium, the rarest version with unique art, different foiling process. These are all things that help sell the set. I think Vivid Voltage, I'm gonna have a really hard time saying that. Vivid Voltage does this really, really well. One of the things that they've done is there's actually a new rarity. It's called Amazing Rare. It is a very, very unique foiling process that they haven't done before, but basically the art, there's kind of a rainbow foiling pattern that radiates outward from the Pokemon inside the art itself. It actually splashes, the foiling actually splashes a little bit outside the art, and it just has kind of a pastel rainbow pattern. It looks very cool. The cards themselves, they're, to my understanding, are not super playable, but that level is certainly there. It's certainly there for the collectors. The appeal of this unique rarity is something, as mentioned, it gives another dimension to the collecting game, and that's why I think just one of the main factors as to why this set will do well. And I think once people have had a chance to look at them, that probably got a lot more people on board to buying the set, to jumping on and trying to get the set in order to open these. It's not clear how rare they are, but with how cool they look, it's the first time it's being printed, I think that's going to be a big selling point for people. So to sum it all up, Vivid Voltage, very collectible. It is short printed as of this time. Jim, aren't all the Rainbow Rares legendary or mythical Pokemon too? Yes, I believe they are. I think we've seen I saw Celebi. I believe there was a Rayquaza. I haven't looked at the full set list in itself, but they are some of the more in demand and popular Pokemon out there. So I think that is a big selling part of the set. So to sum it up, Vivid Voltage, it really, really hits on the nose. It's a good time. It's a little bit before Black Friday, so these products will be out there for people from retail who wants to get these products in the hands of people. It's there. Singles will do very well. The EV on the set is very, very high, so it's actually relatively profitable to be opening up boxes right now for stores because there's so many high-valued singles inside the set. So Vivid Voltage, good product. It'll be interesting to see when the second wave of it comes, when it's more available to stores. To my understanding, the few retailers I have spoken with, they probably didn't order as much as they should have, or if they ordered a large amount, it is possible that they did get allocated and aren't getting as much, simply because there isn't much of it at the time available. But if this changes before the holidays, I do expect that this set will continue to do well until we really reach that saturation in demand and it brings the price of these down. On the topic of Pokemon, Monday, mail day for me, I get a bunch of packages in. So just to share some of the more interesting things I bought over this past week. This is a graded Charizard. I've been buying these. I think that with a surge in people returning to the game, I think short term, it's possible these may drop in price a little bit. If that does, I think it is a prime time to be buying more of them. This isn't a first edition. If you look closely, this is, I'll hold it up to the camera. This is just Unlimited Charizard. It's 8. It's not phenomenal quality. I don't think it is worth regrading. I do see a nick in the bottom corners here and some edge wear along the top. But visually, for someone who wants this, I think this is a quality piece. This is something that in the short term will likely drop as more people are submitting their cards to Pokemon. But long term, if the price does drop, once we see a huge batch of cards come back from people who get their submissions back from PSA, from Beckett, etc., if they get cheap, that is probably the time to buy. You want to be buying into the dip ahead of when prices rebound, because when prices rebound, they're going to be higher than they are at now. I think the plateau that we've kind of reached a plateau in prices themselves in terms of how much more people want to be paying for these at this time. But as mentioned, the plateau we're currently at, it does feel like it's slowed down. We don't really see the crazy growth anymore, and that's probably indicative of the market is slowly adjusting. People are starting to become used to what prices should be for some of these old cards. But with these prices in mind, price memory is a very, very powerful thing when it comes to trying to establish prices on collectibles. Once people have an idea that an unlimited Charizard is worth this price in this grade, a Shadowless Charizard is worth this price in this grade. Once we have those numbers in place, in the future, even if more of these do hit the market, as mentioned, price memory, people will think back to a time when I remember when Charizard was at this price, and that will likely prompt a lot of people to be buying in before the market rebounds and it becomes inaccessible for people. So just something to keep in mind. This is something I'm more than happy to stash away. If I find the right number for a buyer for someone who does want this, I'd be more than happy to sell it. But most of these probably going inside a safe along with other things just to hold on to, because there's no real rush to sell. The market right now, if it has plateaued, no reason to sell. I did buy this at a good price, but more than willing to hold on to this and wait for it to go up. Here, there's a few other cards. We have a Blaine's Charizard. We have 2 foil Dark Charizards from Team Rocket set, and then a Sabrina's Gengar first edition. Most of these relatively clean with WotC era cards, that era from 1999 to 2003. These cards are largely going to be the equivalent of Magic's reserve list. I largely already think that Pokemon cards in general do kind of fall naturally into reserve lists. Pokemon doesn't really have any incentive to go back and print cards from previous generations, but WotC cards, due to licensing, these cards are basically about safe investments in Pokemon as you can get. A lot of these, similar, especially with first edition cards, unlikely to be reprinted again in a capacity in the future. So these, especially the more iconic ones, the Charizards, will likely hold their value very well. So in my mind, these are similarly also easy buys for me. I'm willing to sit on these. Likely because these are LP, even though they may not be 10s, they're not super nice. It's very clear there's some edge wear on these. These all are solidly LP cards. They won't get crazy grades, but they're going to be worth sending off. They are, I think I paid $800 for these 4, I think. So I'm perfectly fine to send these off with the time it takes to get these back from whatever grading service I choose to use anyways. There's no real issue with the market. If these aren't accessible to me for 8 months or however long it takes for me to get them back, more than happy with that, because within the 8 months, I'm not going to turn around and sell anyways. I think a lot of people do fall in the trap right now of they dig up their old Pokemon cards, they think that there's value there, they pay the premium to get them graded quickly, and even quickly trying to get a quick turnaround, you're still waiting at roughly 4 times the guarantee. So 8 months for bulk submission, sending these off, waiting 8 months, not issue for me. The people who are sending them off quickly, they're paying the premium to get graded because they want to sell these as quickly as possible. I don't fault anyone for doing that, but I think they're potentially leaving money on the table by trying to sell them right away. Granted, there are people who don't care. They are more than happy to get the windfall from finding their old Pokemon cards they've had laying around, getting the nicer ones graded and collecting wherever they can. But as someone who is buying still, I think buying now is a better time than ever. So these were kind of the 2 more interesting pieces of mail that I did pick up. I did pick up some other things, nothing that's really worth noting. These were some of the bigger ones. These will just kind of go into a growing pile of cards that will be stashed away, cards that I will hold on to and just let simmer and grow over time. I think the biggest reason for this is kind of moving onwards into our next topic, is we discussed previously what would happen with the economy, what happens to the stock market leading up to an election and after an election. You want to go back and listen. I did talk very briefly about that thing, but today I think the most important thing to know, some of the big headlines from today, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals did announce that they have a COVID vaccine that they are suggesting is 90% effective. Regardless of what you feel about vaccines, or if you want to get it or not, I think this is one of the things that is very, very promising going forward. The market has also surged as well. The Dow Jones, I want to say, is up about 4%. They are roughly on track when I was writing this outlined a few hours ago. They're roughly on track to have their best single closing day this year, and I believe they're potentially looking at reaching an all-time high for the market. This is something that's actually mirrored across the world. If you look at the Tokyo Stock Exchange, the Nikkei Index, if you look at the London Stock Exchange, all these markets have experienced a relative boom within business day for Monday. Most of the markets, the London Stock Exchange, Tokyo Stock Exchange, they're closed as at this time, but they all did experience a similar surge. This is something that is relatively assuring, especially regarding the election results. So now that we have some stability looking forward, I think that we should be expecting, I don't want to necessarily say a light at the end of the tunnel, but a healthier market. This is something that is likely going to impact collectibles in the future. I believe, let's see, on Friday was the 6th. Friday, the report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they came out for the month of October. The U.S. unemployment rate is down to 6.9%. This is also something that is reassuring, with more people back on their feet, with more people getting jobs, especially going into holiday season. This is something that is, again, going to bode very well for the collectible market. The collectible market, although we often say that it operates independently of what the stock market is doing, because people look at assets in a different form than what the stock market does. Usually a healthy stock market indicates a healthy economy that gives people more opportunity to be buying collectibles. So it is a relative win-win for the collectible market. I think going forward, I've mentioned this before, I think this is probably going to be as good a time as any. Now that we are looking at a potential upturn, now that the market is looking to be healthier, if we see more people returning to work ahead of the holidays, regardless of what the pandemic is actually going to do, with more money being injected into the market, with people needing to be buying gifts, all these things ahead of the holidays, I think this is a good time. Usually if you're trying to buy into a dip. That's why, like these things, I'm trying to buy them as quickly as possible, because I think these are going to be long-term prospects. I'm not looking to sell these for slightly more than what I paid for them. I have no reason to do that. Holding on to these things are going to be things that, for the future, these are going to pay off much more than trying to get that small profit margin on them right now. So buying right now, I think we're still in a relative dip, even though it has plateaued, even though we may see some of the prices stabilize or drop going forward. I think you want to be buying now ahead of whatever happens to come next year. Because if we do see a resurgence in the market, if the market starts to become very bullish again, then people are going to start realizing that I should have bought these things back in November. That being said, I've said this multiple times before, past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This isn't for certain, but in my mind, these are all sound reasons to be buying right now versus trying to wait in the future, because things will only get more expensive. Kind of shifting away from talking about the real world economics and the market itself, Commander Legends, some of these things do tie back into the real world market. So we'll revisit that in a moment. But I think with Commander Legends, I've heard from several retailers in the same line as Vivid Voltage, there are going to be severe supply allocations with Commander Legends. This may not be uniform across the board. It's possible your game store may be flushed and stocked with these, depending on how much they ordered. But I know from some larger retailers, they have gone what they ordered cut. There was simply not enough to go around, so they had to scramble to order from multiple distributors and try and get their full allotment. It is important to note that one of the biggest reasons that is probably a contributing factor to this is that Commander Legends, the packs are being printed with 20 cards inside each one, very similar to the printing process for Jumpstart. Jumpstart had the same idea, 20 card packs, 20 card packs, 24 packs inside a booster box. This is different than their standard printing process with draft boosters with 15 cards in a pack, 36 packs inside a box. That's what they had via Zendikar Rising set boosters, a little bit different. But with Commander Legends, with the unique printing process, it is a little bit different. And I think that has caused them some logistical issues. We know that Commander Legends was already pushed back from its initial release date. Jumpstart, they had to push back their release date, and Europe at the time had a very, very severe pushback with how much with their release date for Jumpstart. The Jumpstart was only released last month. It is possible Wizards hasn't announced it yet, but it wouldn't surprise me in the next week or so if they did mention that there is a supply allotment, that a lot of this product is going to be allocated initially until they get a bigger wave to come out. This may not be the best way to analyze the data, but I went on TCG Player and I looked at some of the sets. I do suspect that many sets printed this year are going to be a relatively small print run compared to sets from the past few years, likely due to what they had anticipated with COVID. If they were printing earlier in the year, they may have cut production short. They may have printed less. If they had predicted that the pandemic would adversely affect their sales, how much people would be spending. So I went on TCG Player, I looked. So from 2019, I went through sets. I just typed in X set booster box to see how much supply out there is, how much supply there is out there on these booster boxes that are coming out. So this is, I'll talk about in a moment, the results. But Ravnica Allegiance, there are 41 listings. War of the Spark, there are 52 listings. Core 2020, there are 49 listings. Throne of Eldraine, there's 46 listings. Theros Beyond Death, there are 53 listings. Ikoria Lair Behemoth, 77 listings. Core 2021, 64 listings. Zendikar Rising Draft Boosters, 68 listings. So these are all the sets that have released. These are all the standard product that have released since 2019. And we see that even though Ravnica Allegiance, War of the Spark, Core 2020, I believe they're out of print. They have been out of print. Their supply is not that much lower than what's in stock right now. Throne of Eldraine, Theros, Ikoria, Core 21, Zendikar Draft Rising Boosters. The supply is largely in line with what we would expect for a product that's been out of print, but with how few of these boxes are out there, makes me think that either stores are not ordering very much, they don't have very much left in stock, or conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat, what have you, that product that came out this year is actually being printed less. I haven't been to a game store in quite some time. I haven't set foot inside one. I don't know if the product is going to be as flush inside game stores, or what people's experience are going to game stores and trying to get the most current product. But I do have the general feeling that if stores are struggling with cash flow, with their cash reserves, how much money they're spending on product, that most stores probably under-ordered some of the standard sets, and I do think that supply issues will be compounded in the next year, especially if we're going to expect some sort of return to normalcy and people are able to start going out to game stores again. We possibly are looking at bigger-ish events later in the year. All these things are going to start coming back if there is truly a supply shortage this year. When I looked at Jumpstart, there was actually even a bigger supply shortage than what I expected. There are 19 total listings on TCG Player. There's 59 total boxes. And some of those boxes have relatively outlandish prices, so some of them I didn't even really take into consideration. There are 59 total boxes of Jumpstart available on TCG Player. This makes me think that even if we look at some of the larger distributors, some of the larger game stores, Card Kingdom, Star City, Channel Fireball, I'm really curious to see what their numbers look like, but I don't necessarily suspect that they would have a large backstock as well. The restock that came so much later after the initial printing of Jumpstart. I do suspect that a lot of people were probably past the time where they would be interested in ordering it. I think that Jumpstart is one of those weird products that the idea is cool, the implementation is cool. The fact that it was released in the middle of a pandemic was probably the worst possible outcome. I suspect that there may be a large market next year for people, once people are able to gather again, being able to play Jumpstart the way it was intended, being able to do draft with Commander Legends the way these are intended to be done, will create a huge demand for these products. I think if you're able to buy Jumpstart and stash it away, if you're able to buy Commander Legends and stash it away, I think there is potential room for growth with those particular sealed products. If my suspicion is right, and a lot of these products, there is going to be less supply of them than in the past years, it is possible that some of these products, especially some of the more loved ones, is possible that there may be some potential for growth in the future with them that we haven't really seen since probably 2012, before Return to Ravnica and Theros really started to push the printing of sealed product sky high, and supply has really exceeded what possible demand there is. That being said, I do think that regardless of where you stand, if you agree or not that product is being short printed this year, we can only look at what we know in front of us in terms of data. We know that Zendikar Rising, there was a pretty severe allocation. We know that a lot of product this year has gotten pushed back. The pandemic has really put a wrench in terms of Wizards of the Coast and other game companies, Pokemon, Konami, being able to distribute their product. I think all these complications, as it were, do give that potential for growth for some of these products in a way that we haven't seen before. I don't think it's unreasonable that if you do find a good deal, if you're able to put your money and stock a case of these and just stash away and forget about it, I do think there's room for growth. I think 1 year may be a little bit too soon, but it's possible in 2 to 3 years, when people start coming back and people start wanting to look at some of these older products, it is possible that some of these products, with if there was a short print that people didn't really get in and people weren't able to play it the way that it was intended in 2020, that there may be demand, there may be growth for some of these products. That being said, I think it is a risky play. I would advise against going too deep on these. If there are other people who are thinking the same thing as you are, thinking the same thing as I am, if you're going to buy up a bunch of product and stash it away, it is possible that if the price does increase again, there will be a massive wave of these hitting the market from people who have sat on product and just waited for them to pop in price before injecting them into the market. That is a possibility. It is also possible that as time goes on, as we have, depending on the popularity of Commander Legends, it is possible that we may see another wave of these come, and they may continue to come as Wizards wants the demand on these to be met. That remains to be seen. If we look at Modern Horizons 1 boxes, even though the singles have slowly started to do better and better, the prices on Modern Horizons 1 boxes have remained pretty stagnant since its release 18-ish months ago. There was definitely a surge. There was definitely a point when the box EV was much, much higher than this, but that didn't really push the box prices up. And with the potential fear that these cards could be reprinted, I do suspect that Commander Legends cards will probably be reprinted at some point in the near future, depending on how the single market shakes out. If there are some particular cards that perform exceedingly well, it really incentivizes Wizards to either reprint those cards in future Commander Legends products, potentially design a Commander Legends 2 product, because this is one that we expect them to do well with, and it will likely be a very popular product based on how much people are pre-ordering, how much demand there is, how much chatter there is. These are all things that are working against Commander Legends product going up, and I would, again, give a lot of caution to going too deep on sealed product. I've shared my feelings on sealed product before. It is one of those things that I think Wizards has made it more and more difficult to be successful with sealed product over the years. There have been a few real good hits in the past few years. I think the biggest winners since 2012 in terms of sealed product are far and few in between. The biggest winners would be the boxes that contain masterpieces. So Battle for Zendikar, Oath of the Gatewatch, Kaladesh, Eighth Revolt, Amonkhet, and Hour of Devastation, the original 6. Of those, I think that Battle for Zendikar, the original one with the original Shocklands and Fetchland expeditions, that one has performed very well, and then Kaladesh with the initial iteration of Masterpieces have done very well. The other ones have gone up. There's been some better demand for them, but they're still kind of Eldritch Moon has done fairly well as well, but not the same returns that we have seen before. Even the pre-2012 boxes have largely remained relatively stagnant in price. I think the pandemic does kind of put a bit of a damper on some of these products because it's made it more difficult for people to interact with each other. A lot of value in older sealed boxes is trying to gather your friends and get a box and being able to experience draft formats from 2012, 2010, what have you, some of these older formats that people just haven't really been able to experience. So again, last thought, I really do advise caution. If you're feeling a little ambitious, I don't think it probably hurts to put away 1 case, 2 cases, a handful of these boxes from this year. It's possible that if you do want to go back down the line and get friends together and have fun with a bunch of Jumpstart or have fun with a bunch of Commander Legends, if we do see more come in, depending on how the supply is being allocated, it's probably a good time to buy it, stash it away if you want, and then maybe look at it again in 6 months to a year, see how the product is done. Worst case scenario, you're a year late to get a Commander Legends booster draft in with your friends. Best case scenario, it has gone up, it has appreciated, there's demand for these, and people want to be buying and playing with these again. And it does cost the price to go up because I've said this before, once a set is no longer the most current product, demand for it really falls off a cliff. We look at Jumpstart. Jumpstart was hugely successful in terms of sales. There was a lot of demand for it at release. A lot of the singles, still relatively expensive. A lot of the reprints that came with Jumpstart haven't really shifted the price on those singles at all because there was just so little of it. But now that Jumpstart was available again, it feels like people are reluctant to buy in because we've had so many sets in that. Since Jumpstart has come out, we've had Core 2021, we've had Zendikar Rising, we're looking at Commander Legends, and that's not counting in the slew of secret layers that have come out since then. We've had Double Masters. All these things have really made it so that Jumpstart is one of those things that kind of falls in the back of people's mind. And even though Jumpstart, it's only been about 5 months or so since its actual release, people aren't really thinking about Jumpstart anymore. So just all things to consider. Personally, I think if I had more room, I would probably buy somewhat small amount of Commander Legends and be okay stashing away, sitting on it. Unfortunately, room is at premium for me right now. I simply have too much stuff. There's simply too much stuff I'm trying to get rid of. And sealed product, unfortunately, is one of those things that goes for me first. Mainly because, in my experience, trying to store it, trying to sell it, all these things are, to me, worth more work than what's worth, even though there is money to be made. But if I did have more room and I wasn't trying to spend so much money on other things, I would certainly be inclined to stash some of it away and hold it for a rainier day. So with that, that's a wrap on today's episode. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Edwin13. You can find the social media sites for Vermilion on the right. Thank you all for listening. Wherever you're in the world, stay safe, and we'll be back tomorrow with more. Thanks again.